Tariq was just solving a math problem, until his white professor accused him of rewriting history. In front of 200 students, he was dragged out mid-lecture for getting every answer right. They said he cheated, but what he'd really done was invent something they couldn't control. Now the university wants to erase him entirely. But tonight he's about to prove math never lies. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. It began with a smirk, the kind of smirk Tariq Ellison had seen too many times before. Smug, knowing, weaponized. A smirk that didn't need to speak to say everything. Professor Gregory Slate leaned casually against the front desk of the massive lecture hall, eyes scanning the room like a hawk before they settled, deliberately on Tariq. 200 students, one black freshman. Tariq Ellison, the professor called out, his southern drawl slicing through the low murmur of shuffling notebooks and opening laptops. You're in the wrong seat. That row's reserved for seniors.
Tariq blinked. He wasn't. He checked twice. Sir, this is...
Did I ask for a debate? Slate cut him off, smile still plastered across his face. I said move. Whispers crept through the auditorium. No one looked at him directly, but they watched. Oh, they always watched when it was a black student being put in their place. Tariq stood slowly, swallowing the acidic burn behind his sternum. He moved down and away from the center row to a creaking chair near the front wall. A statement had already been made. You don't belong in the middle. You sit at the margins. Professor Slate resumed the lecture, like nothing happened. No one intervened. By the third week, Tariq had counted 7 separate times. Slate had called him out for over-annotated notes, for sloppy handwriting on homework, for speaking out of turn when he answered a question correctly. He was a black dot on a whiteboard of silence, standing out no matter how hard he tried to shrink. Then came the quiz. It was routine. A 15-minute worksheet on derivatives. Tariq flew through the problems, double-checked his work, and placed it at the edge of his desk as instructed. As he stood to leave, Slate approached, lifting Tariq's quiz like it was radioactive. Interesting, the professor said loudly enough for the nearby students to hear. That was fast. Tariq tilted his head. I've practiced a lot. I do this kind of math at night. Slate said, eyes narrowing. Or maybe you've just got a good memory for other people's work. The accusation hung in the air, invisible but dense. I don't cheat, Tariq said firmly. Security, please escort Mr. Ellison to the academic office. His quiz won't be accepted today. The room fell deathly silent. Tariq didn't fight. He gathered his bag and walked out, his ears burning with invisible fire. Not a single voice rose in his defense. Not even the ones who sat near him and saw him complete the quiz without glancing at anyone else's paper. They all pretended to stare at their notes. As the heavy doors closed behind him, a flash memory slammed into Tariq's chest. Freshman year of high school. Principal Willows, tall and unbending, holding Tariq's science project in his hand, and declaring, "This isn't yours. No freshman builds a functional circuit board." His mother had driven up to the school the next day, voice raised and spine straight, demanding they credit her son. They never did. Now it was happening again. Tariq made his way to the academic office, where a receptionist glanced at the file, shrugged, and handed him a complaint form. He filled it out meticulously, fingers trembling. When he pressed submit, the screen blinked and said error 403, form submission failed. He tried again. Same message. The woman at the desk just shrugged again. Try again tomorrow. Happens sometimes. Tariq walked back to his dorm in silence. The day felt like glass, clear and breakable. It wasn't just about a quiz. It wasn't about a seat in the lecture hall. It was about erasure. One humiliation at a time. They were trying to erase his legitimacy, his presence, his right to be brilliant. But Tariq Ellison didn't come from silence. His mother was a nurse who had taught herself calculus in the 90s just so she could tutor her son. She once said, "Don't let them tell you where you fit, baby. Show them where the system fails." That night, in his cramped dorm room, Tariq sat at his desk and stared at the equations he loved. The clean symmetry of derivatives. The elegant mess of multivariable functions. But it all felt rigged. What if math could expose that rigging? He pulled out a dry erase marker, one he'd been gifted at a summer camp for young black scholars. He began writing on his window pane, his only clean canvas. X's and Y's collided with G's for gatekeeping, with V's for violation. He mapped his experience into variables, The system's pattern became clearer with every scribbled arrow and dashed line. It wasn't just anecdotal, it could be modeled. Math didn't lie, but people used math to lie. What if there was a new math? A framework that didn't just solve for X, but for why X was suppressed in the first place. Tariq's phone flashlight illuminated the formula-covered glass. Symbols twisted into meaning, concepts layered into something radical, oppression quantified. His hand trembled as he stepped back. The window was full now, an unorthodox structure that connected prejudice, access, academic patterns, all through logic. He didn't fully understand what he'd created. Not yet. But it was different. New. Alive. Then a knock rattled his door. He opened it to find a thick manila envelope resting on the floor. No note. Inside, a printed copy of his quiz, stamped with the word void in red, and a short typed message. Your future in this department is over. Withdraw now. No signature. No explanation. But he knew who sent it. Tariq stared at the paper, then at the window. And for the first time, he didn't feel powerless. He felt provoked. He picked up the marker again, not to erase, but to expand the equation. One line at a time, Tariq began building something no one had ever seen. A new form of calculus born, not from academia, but resistance. The air in the faculty lounge was thick with roasted coffee and casual arrogance. Professor Gregory Slate sipped his double espresso with the calm confidence of a man who'd long ago stopped fearing consequences. His loafers were kicked up on the table as he leaned back and chuckled, his voice louder than necessary. So our friend Tariq won't be coming back, he said, swirling his cup like it was wine. I give him 2 weeks. I was off by 1. Laughter bubbled around the room, polite, complicit, well-practiced. The kind of laughter that came from people too proud to admit they were racist, but too comfortable to question anything that made their world easier to control. Let me guess, chimed in Dr. Hansen from the philosophy department. He tried the I was targeted card. Slate grinned. Of course he did. They always do. It's the move when you realize you're in over your head. In the corner, Dr. Riley Chen stirred her tea with deliberate slowness. She was the only adjunct in the room, and easily the youngest by a decade. Her dark eyes flicked up from her book just long enough to catch Slate's expression. He looked pleased, like someone who'd just solved a riddle no one else could. You ever think maybe, she said carefully, he's in over his head because someone keeps pushing it down. The room went quiet for a half-second, just long enough to feel dangerous. Slate didn't look at her. It's calculus, not social justice, Riley. Some folks just aren't cut out for it. The moment passed. Another laugh, another sip, another ugly truth swept under a polished rug. Meanwhile, Tariq was on a mission, one fueled by confusion and something worse, disbelief. He hadn't received any emails about being dropped. No warning, no academic probation. But when he tried logging into the university portal that morning, his access was gone. No class schedules, no assignments, nothing. So he did what every student feared. He walked back into the lion's den. He stepped into Slate's lecture hall, 10 minutes before class began. Students were filing in. Some nodded at him cautiously. Others avoided eye contact. Slate was prepping slides. Tariq cleared his throat. Sir, I'm not seeing my name on the course platform. Is there a mistake? Slate didn't look surprised. No mistake. You failed the first assignment. That invalidates your participation grade. University policy. But that wasn't an assignment. It was a quiz. And I didn't cheat. Slate turned to him slowly, his voice just loud enough for the front rows to hear. Mr. Ellison, failure comes in many forms, not just cheating. Sometimes it's just being unprepared. Tariq clenched his fists, then relaxed them. He wouldn't give Slate the scene he wanted. I'm not withdrawing. You already have, Slate replied smoothly. Check with the registrar. He turned back to the projector. Class begins in 2 minutes. At the registrar's office, the receptionist didn't look up from her computer when she asked for his ID. She typed, squinted, then frowned. Huh. You've been dropped. Professor submitted a grade override. Said your initial score disqualified you under department retention standards. What standards? Tariq asked, voice rising. The clerk shrugged. We don't decide that here. It happens sometimes. First years wash out. But I didn't. She looked up at him now. A little softer. Should have expected it. Happens every year. Especially in STEM. The words hit harder than Slate's silence. Happens every year. Just enough to raise eyebrows, never enough to raise alarms. Tariq left the office in a daze. The walls felt closer than they were. The hallways stretched like tunnels, each face he passed fading into a blur. He didn't realize someone had followed him until he stepped outside. "You're Tariq, right?" The voice was calm, precise, female. He turned. A tall black woman stood under a tree, laptop bag slung over her shoulder. Her hair was in long locks, pulled back into a band, and her eyes held the weight of someone who'd seen this play out before. "I'm Nia Branch. Sociology PhD. I was in the office when you asked about your enrollment." Tariq blinked. "You heard that?" She nodded. "I've heard it too many times." There was a pause. "I've been working on a thesis," she continued, "about racial attrition in academia. I've been tracking cases like yours. You're not alone." Tariq looked skeptical. "You say that like it's supposed to help." She smiled, not with joy, but understanding. "I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to connect you." They walked to a quiet building on the east side of campus. A narrow staircase led to an old study room, with no windows, only a door labeled, "Storage, do not enter." Inside, the room looked nothing like storage. Whiteboards covered every wall, scribbled with charts, timelines and names. There were 3 worn couches, and a round table stacked with binders. 7 faces looked up as they entered. Black students, all older, each with something quiet in their eyes. Not defeat, not yet, but exhaustion, dressed in dignity. Nia introduced them one by one. Jordan, media studies. Devante, chemical engineering. Ari, law. Simone, statistics. Malik, political science. Eliza, education theory. "They call us the Silent Seven," she said, "because none of us made noise when we got pushed, but we stayed. We've been tracking faculty patterns, who they target, who they subtly remove." Tariq scanned the wall. It wasn't paranoia, it was a blueprint. Patterns of sabotage, grade tampering, ethics violations, used to justify disenrollment. It was all there. "How long has this been happening?" he asked. Nia exhaled. "Decades. But they're smarter about it now. It's quiet, legal adjacent, looks like attrition, reads like underperformance." Tariq stared at one whiteboard labeled Slate, 2014 present. 7 names were crossed out. All black, all gone. "That's his pattern," Malik said grimly. "You're number 8. The group stayed late into the night, comparing notes. Tariq shared what happened with the quiz, the form error, the envelope. Nia's eyes widened at the mention of the red-stamped void. "That's intimidation," she said. "Maybe even unlawful." "We can't go public," Simone added. "Yet. They'll say we're just bitter. We need undeniable proof." Tariq nodded, thoughts spinning. He hadn't come looking for a war, but it had found him anyway. Maybe the equation he'd started on his window was bigger than just math. Maybe it was truth, encoded, evidence, quantified. Before he left, Nia handed him a folder. "What's this?" he asked. "Names," she said. "People who fought back and disappeared. People you're fighting for, whether you want to or not." Tariq took the folder, and something in his chest shifted. Not fear. Not anymore. Purpose. Across campus, in his office glowing with dim lamplight, Professor Slate leaned over his desk, a glass of bourbon half full beside him. On his screen was Tariq's withdrawn profile. "Gregory," came a voice from the door. It was Hanson. Slate turned. "He's out." Formally dropped. "Already?" Hanson asked, mused. Slate chuckled. "One down." But as he clicked away from the screen, Slate didn't notice the tiny light blinking on the corner of his laptop screen, recording active, broadcasting every word to a hidden server. Nia Branch had set up weeks ago, for moments just like this. It started with a tick. A glitch, really. Just one wrong mark on a graded problem set from Professor Slate's course. Tariq wasn't even enrolled anymore. But Nia had helped him secure copies of class recordings, past grading rubrics and assignments shared among the Silent Seven. She had access through her sociology research privileges, and she'd taught Tariq how to audit information without leaving digital footprints. "Look at question 6, she said, hovering beside him in the cramped study room. Tariq zoomed in on 2 quizzes. One was his. The other belonged to Eli Mercer, a white student who sat 2 rows in front of him during those first few weeks. Same handwriting format. Same logic. Identical answer. One was marked wrong. One wasn't. Tariq stared at the red slash through his solution, like it was a knife wound. This isn't a mistake, he whispered. No, Nia said, her voice hard. It's a pattern. That word haunted him now. Pattern. Tariq began to gather more data. Slowly, quietly, he compared dozens of quizzes from former students, cross-referenced feedback, compiled assignment logs. Nia introduced him to Simone, who specialized in statistical modeling. With her help, they ran preliminary analyses of discrepancy ratios between black and white students across 3 semesters in Slate's class. The results made Tariq nauseous. Black students were marked down 17% more frequently for subjective errors like insufficient explanation or unclear logic, even when their computations were mathematically sound. The university had no official rubric to challenge these types of deductions. There's no appeal process for bad faith, Simone said. They know that. It would have been enough to drive most students to quit. But to Tariq, the injustice felt strangely familiar. Not just from Slate, from teachers in middle school, who refused to believe he solved problems without help, from standardized tests that flagged him as an anomaly for scoring too high, from a school counselor who said, maybe pick something less rigorous than engineering. He was done shrinking for their comfort. Tariq went deeper. He requested a casual tech consult from the university's IT help desk, under the guise of curiosity about grade syncing. The student worker, a sophomore named Becca, laughed nervously, but obliged. Yeah, professors can manually override auto-graded assignments anytime. But it logs changes, so there's accountability, she said. Where are those logs stored? Tariq asked casually. Becca lowered her voice. Technically in the cloud archive, but faculty have tiered access. Not everyone sees everything. And Professor Slate? Tier 3, she said. Highest there is. Tariq thanked her, leaving behind a candy bar as a thank you tip. But what chilled him wasn't that Slate had access. It was that no one seemed to be checking what he did with it. Later that night, using one of the Silent Seven's secure drives, Tariq downloaded footage from several lecture halls, with permission from Dr. Chen. She'd quietly provided the access, slipping him a USB during her office hours. This doesn't leave that room, she warned, voice low. As he scrolled through the clips, Tariq noticed something strange. In 3 separate cases, white students had their mistakes verbally corrected mid-quiz by Slate, often with a helpful nudge. Careful there, watch that negative sign. No such corrections existed for the few black students captured on video. If anything, Slate ignored their raised hands, refused clarifications, and deducted full points for minor errors. This isn't just prejudice, Tariq said one night, surrounded by stacks of annotated screenshots and datasets. It's procedural racism, embedded into the way this department functions. Nia leaned in, tapping her fingers together. Then we treat it like a system. He looked at her, confused. You're a math guy, she said. Systemic bias needs systemic analysis. You want to prove it's racist? Don't just say it, model it. Show the function behind the outcomes. A spark lit in Tariq's chest. He pulled out a fresh notepad and scribbled. Input, student identity assignment quality. Function instructional bias, subjective grading. Output academic expulsion risk. It was crude, but real. He began refining it over the next week, feeding in anonymized data, creating weighted variables for race, class, prior academic performance, faculty interaction frequency. Simone added a visualization module. Milik helped shape the legal implications. By day 8, the model wasn't just theory. It could predict which black students would be targeted for academic removal based on inputs from the first 3 weeks of class. Tariq named it BiasNet. He knew it was only the beginning. Then came the twist that changed everything. Dr. Chen stopped him one afternoon near the humanities building. Her tone was urgent, but her face unreadable. I shouldn't be doing this, she said, slipping him a sealed envelope. I found it on a shared department server by accident. I'm not listed on the access permissions. So if this gets traced, Tariq opened it the moment he got back to the Silent Seven's room. Inside, a string of internal emails between tenured faculty. The most damning one was from Slate himself. We should consider tightening early filters. High risk admits, drain department metrics and rarely persist. If we phase them out by week 4, it'll clean the data. Attached to the email was a list labeled HRP watch list. 8 names. Tariq's was number 4. He stared at the document for a long time. Then he laughed. A bitter, breathless kind of laugh. High risk, he murmured. That's what I am now. But it wasn't academic performance they meant. It was code. HRP wasn't high risk for failing. It was high risk for proving them wrong. We have to go public, Simone said, pacing. This is the smoking gun. No, Tariq replied, calmer than they expected. Not yet. Why not? Naya asked. Because we need a solution, he said. If all we do is expose this, they'll deny it, bury it, say it's out of context. But if we replace it with something better, something they can't ignore, we don't just win, we rewrite the term. The room went quiet. What are you thinking? Malik asked. Tariq picked up a whiteboard marker and began drawing circles, arrows, weighted values, intersecting axes. I'm thinking, what if math itself could reflect justice? What if we had a new method, a logical framework that doesn't just solve equations, but proves the impact of bias numerically? What if students like us didn't have to convince anyone? We just had to show the math. Nia's eyes widened. You're talking about ethical modeling. Structural functions with value-based inflection points. Exactly, Tariq said. We build a model, a logic structure that visualizes injustice the way graphs show velocity or acceleration. He stepped back. We're not just exposing racism, we're reinventing math to account for it. Over the next few days, he began building something radical. He called it intersectional logic mapping, a visual framework of decision trees, each node shaped by academic input and social variables. It wasn't a replacement for calculus, it was an expansion. Where traditional functions asked, what is the rate of change? This method asked, who is impacted by the rate and why? It was ugly, dense, unorthodox, but it was real. Every value had context. Every path had moral consequence. This, Simone whispered during a late-night session, this doesn't belong in a math department. This belongs in history. Tariq wasn't sure whether to take that as a compliment. All he knew was, it wasn't finished. Not yet. But as he worked late into the night, adding the final branches to his logic map, Tariq didn't notice the notification silently blinking in the corner of his screen. An anonymous user was watching his live doc updates from a campus IP address tied to Professor Slate. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. Tariq stared at the ivory-colored folder in his hands. The words Department of Mathematics, Proposal Submission Response, printed neatly at the top. He'd stayed up 3 nights straight, finishing it. Every diagram, every logical progression, every proof built from injustice, coded in mathematics. Oppression matrices, his boldest work yet, was a system that assigned quantifiable weights to structural disadvantages. It wasn't symbolic. It wasn't theoretical. It worked. Tariq had run simulations with real campus data and modeled measurable disparities that lined up perfectly with what students like him had lived for decades. He opened the envelope with trembling fingers. The letter inside was short. Too short. Mr. Ellison, thank you for your submission. While your work presents intriguing cross-disciplinary ideas, it does not meet the mathematical standards or rigor for departmental consideration. Your proposal may be more appropriate for the School of Sociology or Cultural Studies. Respectfully, Dr. S. Travers, Chair, Department of Mathematics. Tariq stood frozen in the quiet study room of the Silent Seven, eyes locked on that one sentence. More appropriate for the School of Sociology. He sank into the couch slowly, mind replaying every calculation, every theorem, every metric he'd double-checked. Simone looked up from her laptop. They rejected it. He nodded. They say it's not math, he murmured. Nia snatched the letter and read it silently. Her jaw clenched. They don't mean not math. They mean not safe. Later that day, Tariq met with Dr. Chen in her shared office, the walls crammed with unfiled folders and second-hand books. She read his full framework without saying a word, flipping each page slowly. Then she stood and pulled the blinds shut. This, she said, tapping the diagram labeled hierarchical bias loops, is going to make people very uncomfortable. Because it's wrong? Tariq asked. No, she said, setting the paper down gently. Because it's right, and it forces math to confess what it's helped hide. Dr. Chen sat back down. Listen, I can't officially advise you, not unless the department backs you, and they won't. Tariq's shoulders tensed. So what do I do? You keep writing, you build the rest, and I'll help off the books. It was the first time someone from the faculty had said I believe you without saying it aloud. The rumor started 3 days later. Tariq had barely finished revising the third version of his matrix structure when a friend from the computer science department texted him a screenshot. It was from a private Slack thread among faculty assistants. The message read, FYI, Ellison's framework looks suspiciously similar to an unpublished draft. Slate mentioned back in 2017. Could be an IP issue. IP issue. Intellectual property. It was a lie, but one wrapped in enough academic jargon to raise red flags. Within hours, whispers spread like static. Tariq heard two TAs in the dining hall mumble plagiarism when he walked past. One even asked him directly, "You sure you didn't just remix someone else's theory?" He reported it. Of course he did. But the university's response came not as an apology, but as a warning. Subject: Academic Integrity Review. Notification of concern. Dear Mr. Ellison, a concern regarding possible overlap between your recent submission and previously discussed departmental research has been filed. Please prepare to meet with the Academic Standards Committee. You may bring an advisor. Tariq stared at the screen, blood draining from his face. The warning wasn't just about reputation, it was procedural. If found guilty, even with no hard evidence, he could be expelled. His scholarship would vanish. His mother's sacrifices, his nights of studying, all wiped away with one claim. Slate hadn't just silenced him. He'd built a trap. His mother arrived the next day without warning. She stood outside his dorm, with a plastic bag of homemade food and the kind of expression that always preceded tears. "Boy, you better not be skipping meals," she scolded softly, hugging him tighter than she had in months. They sat under a tree in the campus quad, her arms folded tight across her chest. "I got a call from the scholarship board," she said quietly. "They said your status is under review, that there's been a violation report. You want to tell me what's going on?" Tariq hesitated. "Mom, they're trying to erase me."
Again. They're saying I stole my own work.
Her lip trembled. "Baby, you've always been smarter than the rules they gave you. But sometimes being smart ain't enough when the game is fixed." He looked away. "You want to know the worst part?" she asked. "When you were in 3rd grade, you did a science fair project on fractals. Your teacher called me and said no way you did it alone. Said I must have done it for you. I remember standing in that classroom, holding your project board, and knowing it wasn't just about science, it was about them never seeing you as real." Tariq swallowed the lump in his throat. "I don't want you to go through this again," she said, voice breaking. "Come home. Just for a while." "I can't," he said, his voice steady but soft. "Why not?" "Because if I leave now, I'll prove them right." Back in the Silent Sevens room, the others gathered around a printout of Slate's email, now connected to multiple other internal communications. Dr. Chen had discreetly shared. They were building a timeline, a pattern of discrediting, of removal. Simone laid the files across the table. "He's done this before, we can prove it. But it won't matter if Tariq gets expelled first," Malik warned. Tariq stared at the whiteboard across from him. The logic map he'd built, his proof by oppression, was scrawled across it in black, red, and blue markers. He traced the central node with his finger. Faculty intent, algorithmic leverage, academic erasure. This wasn't about fairness. It was about survival. "I need to finish the full framework," he said suddenly. "All 12 sectors. If I can mathematically simulate the institutional outcomes and show clear causality, they can't dismiss it as anecdote." "Then what?" Nia asked. "Then we go public." The campus grew colder with each passing day. He worked under threat, lived under rumor, breathed under pressure. Emails from the committee arrived with language that implied guilt. "Please provide a defense against the claim rather than, we are reviewing a report." Even Dr. Chen warned him. They're not looking for truth. They're looking for precedent. Then it happened. As he reviewed the latest structure of his oppression matrices, a system that now included predictive analytics, based on GPA decay over semesters, an alert flashed on his screen. "Your scholarship status has been updated." He logged in immediately. Status on hold. Pending review. That was all it said. Tariq's hands trembled. This wasn't academic anymore. This was economic violence. One red stamp away from being pulled out of the only place he'd fought to belong in. He shut his laptop and leaned back, his chest rising and falling in shallow rhythm. Slate wasn't just trying to discredit him. He was trying to starve him out. That evening, in a locked office 3 floors above the math lab, Slate submitted an official academic dishonesty report against Tariq, attaching a falsified PDF of a draft theory, allegedly dated 2 years prior, with an eerily similar diagram. The invitation arrived with no signature, Just a line of text in Tariq's university inbox. Meet me in Math 310 at 5:45 p.m. We can resolve this privately. GS. Tariq read it twice, then once more, slowly. There was no doubt who had sent it. He almost deleted it. But something in the wording, resolve this privately, carried the chill of something darker than negotiation. It sounded like a warning disguised as mercy. By 5:40 he was standing outside room 310, the hallway dim, almost deserted. His fingers brushed the voice recorder clipped inside his coat pocket. It was hidden under his hoodie, an old model, nothing fancy, but it worked. He took a breath, opened the door, and stepped into enemy territory. Professor Slate sat alone at the round seminar table, a crystal paperweight spinning lazily in his fingers. No laptop, no books, just a single sheet of paper with the university letterhead. Glad you came, Slate said without looking up. Tariq said nothing. He closed the door behind him. Slate gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. I'll be brief. Tariq didn't sit. Slate gave a short laugh. Amused. Fine. Suit yourself. He held up the paper. This is a formal withdrawal agreement. If you sign it, we'll bury the plagiarism charge. We'll reinstate your scholarship through other means. You'll transfer to another department. Something more fitting. Tariq's jaw clenched. And if I don't, then the committee will rule against you. Slate said smoothly. We'll make it look by the book. You'll be expelled by next semester. No appeal. No re-entry. No record. Tariq stared at him. Slate leaned forward, tone tightening. I'm giving you an off-ramp, Ellison. Because whether you know it or not, you've trespassed. You think you invented something? You haven't. You stirred a pot you don't even understand. You're trying to rewrite the rules of a game you weren't invited to play in. The voice recorder was running now, quietly capturing every syllable. You plagiarized a framework you couldn't possibly have developed on your own, Slate continued. It doesn't even look like you're thinking. It's too polished, too structured. Tariq's voice was low but clear. You think because I'm black I couldn't have built it? Slate blinked, then smiled with no warmth. I think because you're who you are, you don't get to rewrite math. That's not how this works. Tariq's breath caught. Slate stood now, placing both hands on the table. Do you know how many people like you burn out here? You think you're the first one to show up full of fire and new ideas? We absorb your kind, then we rinse, then we forget. The words hit like gravel, coarse, condescending, deliberate. I've seen kids like you since before you were born, Slate added. Gifted, angry, dangerous. And the system takes care of them. Quietly, Tariq stepped back, heart thudding in his chest. Slate shrugged and reached for the agreement. This is your last offer. Sign it and maybe in 10 years you can publish your little theory in a liberal arts journal no one reads. Tariq didn't take the paper. He turned and walked out without a word. Behind him, Slate called out, You can't beat the calculus of rejection, Ellison. You'll always be the anomaly the system rounds down. Back in the Silent Seven study room, Tariq replayed the recording 3 times. Each time felt more surreal. Simone sat with her hands over her mouth. Malik swore under his breath. You got him, Nia said. But will it even matter? That was the question, wasn't it? Slate had tenure. Prestige. Friends on every committee. Tariq had truth. And a tape. But truth didn't win awards. It didn't pay tuition. And it definitely didn't guarantee justice. I'm uploading the audio, Tariq said. Reddit. Anonymous. If they won't listen behind closed doors, we make it public. The post went up at 11:03. Title: Tenured Math Professor Says, Black Student Doesn't Get to Rewrite Math in Leaked Audio. The clip was only 52 seconds long. Just enough to catch Slate's voice, the racial implication, the threat in the phrase people like you don't get to rewrite math. The thread exploded. By morning it had over 30,000 upvotes. A wave of support flooded in from black students at other universities. DMs, comments, anonymous confessions. They shared eerily similar stories, being discredited, erased, boxed out of academic spaces they helped build. Some called Tariq a hero, others called him a mirror. He didn't feel like either. Then came the unexpected twist. A private email arrived from a professor at Howard University, Dr. Xavier Linwood, a well-respected voice in applied mathematics and algorithmic ethics. Dear Mr. Ellison, I came across the Reddit post and dug into your oppression matrices draft. I must say it is one of the most innovative uses of quantitative logic I've seen applied to structural inequality. If you're willing, I'd like to mentor you through peer review and help you publish this properly. I believe the field needs your voice. Dr. Xavier Linwood, Department of Mathematical Justice, H. Tariq read it twice. It felt like a hand reaching through the noise. A doorway to a room Slate had sworn he could never enter. He forwarded it to Mia with one word. Hope. She replied. Proof. For a few days things felt almost possible. Tariq continued refining the framework with help from Simone and Dr. Linwood. Nia began drafting a companion paper on the sociological implications of algorithmic injustice. They called the joint project Proof by Oppression, Quantifying Marginalization in Academic Environments. Meanwhile, the Reddit post continued to grow, covered now by niche blogs, academic Twitter, even a student-led podcast. Momentum was building, but Slate hadn't disappeared. He was watching, waiting, calculating. News broke quietly through an internal memo. Tariq's upcoming presentation at the Southeastern Undergraduate Math Conference had been pulled due to eligibility concerns. It took less than an hour to confirm Slate's fingerprints. He'd contacted the conference board, citing unresolved academic violations and active investigations, implying that allowing Tariq to speak would jeopardize the conference's integrity. No hearing, no official decision, just whispers enough to cancel his platform. Tariq read the email 3 times, then stood in silence while the others stared at the screen. He's scared, Simone said finally. That's why he's doing this. Nia nodded. Scared means he knows you're close. But Tariq didn't speak. He walked over to the whiteboard and erased a corner of the diagram he'd drawn days earlier. He needed a new path now, one Slate wouldn't see coming. As Tariq recalibrated his plan, Slate sat in a dim office across campus, scrolling through a news article titled, Black Student Challenges University Math Structure with Revolutionary Model, and then picked up his phone and dialed a number labeled, Press Contact, Trusted. The air in the conference center was crisp with possibility. Tariq adjusted the strap of his bag as he stepped through the wide glass doors of the Hilton Westmont, the host site for the Southeastern Undergraduate Math Conference. Banners lined the hallway walls, printed with glossy faces of young scholars and bold taglines like Reimagining Mathematics for the Future. His fingers curled around the printed copy of his latest draft. Oppression Algebra, a quantitative model for structural bias. This was it. His first real opportunity to present outside the campus walls. Away from Slate. Away from the game. Or so he thought. He walked to the registration table, handed over his name, and smiled politely. The woman behind the table typed, then frowned. Tariq Ellison? Yes, she typed again. Her eyes scanned the screen. I'm not seeing you in the system, she said finally. Are you sure you were accepted? Tariq's throat tightened. I received a confirmation. I was told I was presenting during the Emerging Scholars track. She shook her head. Nothing here. Maybe someone forgot to submit your final materials. It happened. It shouldn't have happened, he said, voice taut. She offered a sympathetic shrug. I'm sorry, I don't have you listed anywhere. He stepped back from the table, mind racing. Slate. It had to be. The timing was too perfect, the disappearance too surgical. There'd been no email, no call, just quiet erasure. Again. Nia called him 5 minutes later, after he texted her from the stairwell. Where are you? She asked. Hilton Westmont, he said, staring at the dull beige wall. They erased me. Are you serious? I'm not on the schedule. Not even in the database. She was silent for a moment. Then, stay there. I'm calling Dr. Chen. It was nearly an hour later when Dr. Chen herself arrived at the venue, her tote bag overflowing with papers. She moved like someone who had made herself useful by being underestimated. They froze your entry through a logistical hold, she explained, pulling him aside behind a row of vendor tables. I called in a favor. Tariq looked at her. A favor? I've been listed as a panel advisor, she said. And I just requested a 15-minute backup slot for a student of mine. No one questioned it. He blinked, stunned. You did that? You deserve the room, she replied. Even if they're trying to close the door.
15 minutes.
No slot on the schedule. No audience expecting him. But it was something. The room they gave him was a tiny annex tucked behind the main auditorium. 4 rows of chairs. 1 rusted whiteboard. A projector that flickered like it needed CPR. He sat up quietly, heart pounding, as the last speaker wrapped up and their small audience filed out. 2 people stayed, chatting softly in the back. A student walked in, looking for a charger, and walked back out when he saw Tariq alone at the front. Then the door creaked open again. An older man in a dark blazer entered, holding a notebook. He sat without saying a word. Tariq glanced at him. The badge read Dr. Malcolm Reyes, Editor-in-Chief, Journal of Applied Mathematical Inquiry. He'd heard of the journal, revered in certain circles for pushing boundaries, for platforming unconventional frameworks. But still, it felt surreal. One of the most influential figures in independent mathematical research was sitting in front of him alone. Tariq began anyway. He didn't do introductions. He didn't thank the conference. He didn't offer credentials. He just started writing. First came the logic scaffolding. How inputs like race, academic origin, and professor bias produced disparate educational trajectories. Then came the math vector fields, mapping power dynamics, matrices assigning weighted institutional disadvantages, and equations layered with social logic gates. Oppression isn't anecdotal, he said at one point, his voice finding its rhythm. It's recursive, it loops, it mutates, and it can be predicted. He ended on the symbol he'd crafted as the core of the method, a visual equation, looping between policy, perception, and performance, locked in a cycle of quiet expulsion. Dr. Reyes sat still, not blinking, not nodding, just listening. When Tariq stopped, the room fell quiet. Then Reyes spoke. You're either about to get laughed out of every traditional journal, he said slowly, or you're about to change how we define mathematical ethics. Tariq swallowed hard. I'm hoping for the second one. Reyes smiled, and there was something almost electric in it. Let me ask you this. How do you plan to defend this from accusations of activist math? By proving it's predictive, Tariq said without pause. If I can model future disparities with better than 75% accuracy, they'll have to admit it's not fiction. It's foresight. Reyes nodded. That's bold. He stood. Send me the paper. Full draft. I want to read it, cover to cover. The email arrived 4 hours later. Mr. Ellison, your work has potential. Let's talk. Dr. Malcolm Reyes. Tariq read it again, gripping the edge of the hotel nightstand, like he was afraid the moment might fall apart. Mia called 5 minutes later. Did you get it? She asked breathlessly. I got it.
You're in. You're actually in.
They didn't scream or celebrate. They just breathed, like it was the first time in weeks that they'd allowed themselves to. But hope is rarely allowed to rest for long. When Tariq returned to his dorm that night, something was off. The hallway was too quiet. The door was slightly ajar. He stepped inside. The air smelled like smoke, not fire paper. His desk had been overturned. His notes were scattered, some partially singed. Pages of oppression algebra curled at the edges like they'd been briefly set ablaze, then extinguished. And across the whiteboard wall, scrawled in thick red marker, were the words, "Stay in your place." Tariq stood frozen. His breath caught not from fear but fury.
This wasn't vandalism. This was a message. A warning. A demand.
Nia and Simone arrived within 10 minutes. They documented everything. Photos, timestamps, damage logs. Malik checked the building's security cameras, but found the hallway footage mysteriously missing between 11:40 and 12:50. They wiped the feed, he said, jaw tight. They knew what they were doing. Nia touched Tariq's shoulder. They want you to feel small. He nodded slowly, then looked at the words on the wall. I won't erase it, he said. What? Simone asked. Leaving it up, Tariq replied. Let them see what fear looks like when it's desperate. He picked up a marker and wrote below the threat. Your system's already cracking. As Tariq stepped back, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think this is over? Check your grade report. The knock came early, before the sun had fully risen, when campus still slept behind drawn curtains and unwashed coffee mugs. Tariq's eyes snapped open to the low thud of fists on his door. Campus police. A voice called flatly. Open up, Mr. Ellison. Mia was already pulling on her hoodie beside him. She'd stayed the night after the break-in, refusing to leave him alone. Tariq opened the door slowly, revealing 2 officers, white, broad-shouldered, clipboard in hand. Their eyes swept the room, not with concern but calculation. Got a report about your dorm being vandalized, the first officer said. We'd like to ask some questions. Tariq stepped aside. You're already here. Ask. They examined the mess in silence. One took a few photos. Another scribbled something down. They lingered at the scorched papers. The red message still sprawled across the wall. Any idea who might have done this? When asked. No, Tariq said. But I have my guesses. The officer didn't write that part down. And you have no footage, no eyewitnesses. Tariq shook his head. The hallway camera was wiped. The officer raised an eyebrow. Convenient. That word echoed longer than it should have. You think I did this? Tariq asked sharply. Didn't say that. The officer replied. But it's been known to happen. Students drawing attention, staging incidents.
Nia stepped forward.
You think he torched his own work and vandalized his own wall with a racial slur to get attention? I didn't say that either, the cop replied blandly. But the implication hung in the room like tear gas. Tariq clenched his fists, breathing slowly. Check the building's maintenance logs. If the footage was wiped, it happened from the admin level. We'll look into it, the officer said without conviction. Thanks for your time. They left without filing a full report. Later that day, the internet delivered its second blow. A conservative campus blog, called the Ivory Ledger, published a headline. Student who leaked racist gotcha tape, now accused of staging dorm hate crime. The article was vague, heavy on speculation, and peppered with loaded terms like race-based theatrics, math martyr complex, and progressive delusion. It quoted unnamed sources within the administration and referenced Tariq's prior disciplinary issues as context. The author, G. Slate, contributing columnist. The page also embedded Slate's early draft of a theory suspiciously similar to Tariq's oppression matrices. The attached diagram was clearly doctored, Tariq's own work restructured into a PDF dated. The damage was instantaneous. Tariq's social media was flooded. Support from strangers, but also an avalanche of hate, fraud, race baiter, affirmative action failure. A video breakdown of his theory was posted on YouTube by a right-wing influencer calling him the Jussie Smollett of STEM. Worse yet, Slate's leaked draft began circulating among some faculty members. Quietly, strategically, the narrative had shifted. I need to hit back, Tariq told Nia and Simone in the Silent Seven's room that evening. No, Nia said sharply. You need to prove. How many times do I have to keep proving I belong? Until they run out of lies, she said. We can't play their game. We make them play ours. Tariq exhaled, pressed his palms against the desk. Then I dig deeper. And he did. He returned to old university archives, scouring digital vaults and analog boxes buried in the dusty corners of the library. Nia contacted student journalists. Malik tapped old alumni networks. What they found stunned even them. A Title VI complaint from 2014, filed by a black female student in Slate's upper-level statistics course. It had been quietly closed, lack of corroborating evidence. The document had never made it past internal review. But it was real. Slate had called the student too emotional to handle quantitative reasoning. He'd accused her of cheating on a problem set that later turned out to be copied from the textbook's own solutions manual. She'd withdrawn from the university that spring. Attached to the file was a scanned letter from the student's advisor. Professor Slate has created a chilling environment for minority students in this department. His version of academic rigor seems to disproportionately disqualify those who challenge traditional norms, or worse, those who simply don't look like him. Tariq folded the document, eyes burning. She was me, 10 years ago. That night, Tariq received a Zoom invite from Dr. Malcolm Reyes. The screen loaded with 6 small windows, faces of black scholars from different corners of the country, Michigan, Stanford, Morehouse, MIT, and Howard. Each of them had read Tariq's leaked paper. You've done something I've never seen, said Dr. Aisha Durant from MIT. You've built a framework that mathematically resists the very tools used to gatekeep this field. You didn't just challenge Slate, added Dr. Linwood. You challenged the entire structure, and they felt it. They offered more than praise. They offered mentorship, co-authorship, platforming, academic defense. We want to help you publish in the Mathematical Ethics Review, Dr. Reyes said. This isn't just an idea, it's a new branch. Tariq was silent for a moment. Then, I'm in. The next 2 weeks were a frenzy of drafting, revising, and peer feedback. Tariq restructured his theory to include legal precedent, policy simulations, and predictive applications. Nia provided sociological context. Simone crafted the visual mapping. The final paper was titled, Oppression Algebra, Quantifying Institutional Bias Through Recursive Modeling. It was airtight. They submitted it to 4 peer-reviewed platforms. One responded in less than 4. We are fast-tracking this for review, It deserves space at the intersection of math and justice. Hope returned in waves. Until it didn't. The faculty-wide email landed like a guillotine. Subject: Notice of Academic Review Hearing. Tariq Ellison. To faculty and academic staff. A formal hearing has been scheduled to review allegations concerning academic integrity, conduct violations, and potential fraud by student Tariq Ellison. Faculty presence is encouraged. The hearing will be recorded and transcripts archived. The email included no context, no mention of Slate, no mention of evidence. But the language was unmistakable. Tariq wasn't being evaluated. He was being prosecuted. Simone dropped her phone when she read it. This isn't about math anymore. They're trying to bury him publicly, Malik said. Turn his name into poison. Tariq stood frozen. His chest rose and fell, but no breath reached his lungs. Nia stepped closer. You're not going in alone. I know, he said, but this time, they won't just have to listen. He glanced at the printed Title VI complaint on the table. The faded name at the bottom still visible. They'll have to answer. That night, a mysterious envelope slid under his door. Inside, a faculty roster with red underlines, and a post-it note scrawled with 6 words. You're not the only one left. The waiting room outside the hearing chamber resembled a courtroom. Stuffy air, hushed voices passing in worried murmurs. Tariq sat rigidly in his chair, hands folded in his lap, eyes fixed on the door marked Academic Standards Committee. Closed hearing. The walls, beige and fishbowl thin, felt like they were shrinking. He could hear distant voices before he heard the call. Mr. Ellison. Inside, the panel sat behind a polished wood half-moon desk. 7 faculty members, 5 men and 2 women, dressed in conservative cuts, predominantly white. Leading them was Dr. Carter Monroe, Slate's close colleague and ally, known for her rigid beliefs about upholding academic tradition. The faces stared at him as he entered, expressions flat, waiting. Monroe cleared her throat. Mr. Ellison, thank you for appearing. We're here to evaluate concerns regarding your conduct and academic integrity. You may take a seat. Tariq sat, his recorder hidden in a pocket, his heart pounding. Nia's livestream light was glowing softly from her phone, hidden among the chairs behind him. Monroe opened the hearing. We'll begin with attendance records. Mr. Ellison, it's noted that you missed 3 mandatory lectures early in the semester due to personal scheduling conflicts. Can you explain? Tariq exhaled. Every detail would sting. I was dropped before those lectures. I attempted re-enrollment, but was denied access. University records confirm that I have emails documenting each request. She flicked through printed pages. That may be, but the department never received a finalized quiz submission. That in itself is absence. He shrugged gently. Your records don't reflect the override. Slate submitted nor the duplicate submission uploaded 2 minutes before the deadline. You only see missing. Monroe's eyes narrowed. Let's move on. She leaned forward. Another concern, your framework. Oppression algebra. Some faculty have described it as having an activist bias. How do you respond to the suggestion that your work is driven more by ideology than mathematical rigor? Tariq straightened. There's no conflict between modeling bias and pursuing math. In fact, if bias exists, ignoring it is unscientific. Every variable in my model is assigned a measurable value. The logic gates, the weighted inequalities, they're all testable, verifiable. If accusations of activism mean acknowledging consequences of design, then we shouldn't judge bias by discomfort. Whispers filled the back row. The panel scribbled notes. Monroe pursed her lips. We also have recordings suggesting you influenced social media to bypass institutional channels. Tariq met her gaze. I live-streamed parts of this hearing as it's my right under student expression policy. And because institutional channels failed me. The redacted recording posted publicly was factual and accurate. Monroe's jaw tightened. She consulted a folder. Still, your methods raise concerns. Procedural violations, policy breaches. This isn't just equation breaking, it's rule breaking. As they spoke, Nia's livestream cut into cyberspace, her voice steady over Tariq's shoulders. We are witnessing a closed-door academic hearing. This is how the system tries to silence. To silence. Peer review. Or execution. On campus and beyond. The video exploded. Students began rallying outside departmental buildings. Phones held high. Banners rising. We stand with Tariq. On Twitter, hashtags trended. The campus that had once whispered now echoed. Back in the hearing room, an assistant knocked and slipped in a note. Monroe glanced at it, then cleared her throat. Professor Slate has issued a public statement. He denies involvement in any misconduct. He did not influence any of these actions, and believes this matter is being politicized. Her assurance felt hollow. Slate's voice, clipped from the leaked audio, still haunted the room. Your kind doesn't get to rewrite math. Tariq pressed his lips together. The echo of that moment fueled him. Monroe turned toward Tariq again. Do you have anything new to share? Evidence. Witnesses. He stood, pulled out his hidden laptop, careful to keep the live stream running.
Yes.
He projected new charts. The title VI complaint from the title VI letter. The student's name, anonymized, but her story intact. He traced her experience. Accusing Slate of racism, being ostracized, forced to withdraw. He showed patterns, grade suppression, administrative failures, systemic echo between her case and his own. The panel shifted, uncomfortable. He followed with analytics from Nia about architectural echo. Each removal case followed the same pattern. Quiz invalidations, high-risk labels, sudden disappearance. He pressed, this method proves it's not coincidence. It's policy. Monroe exhaled. Thank you. She tapped her pen. Will now recess. Decision TB. Outside the hearing room, crowds grew. Students from different departments, signs raised high, math for justice, silence and consent. Ellison belongs here. The activist energy pulsed. Tariq emerged, bleary-eyed yet fearless. The crowd parted for him. He nodded once. Under the press of phones and flashlights, he whispered into Nia's ear, they're delaying. Nia nodded. 10 days before verdict. That timeline loomed. Long enough for Slate to regroup, retaliate, but long enough for justice to build steam too. But then came the twist. At midnight, when the university was quiet and lights flickered across dorm halls, Tariq received an anonymous email. Panel Chair Monroe will be replaced. She has professional obligations and will recuse herself. A new chair will be appointed, but not announced until just before the verdict. No explanation, no source, nothing signed. An internal email, but leaked only to him. It wasn't just a delay anymore. The game had changed. Tariq stared at the screen, mind spinning. If Monroe recused herself, then the panel's balance shifted. Slate's allies may gain, unless the new chair was neutral, or worse, sympathetic. He closed his laptop. I know what that means, he whispered. We're not just living on borrowed time, we're on someone else's terms now. The student crowd's chants faded in his memory. The live stream echoed droning voices, the pattern of delay, of control. He needed a new strategy. As the campus buzzed with uncertainty, Tariq received a voicemail from an unlisted number. The distorted voice said only, make sure your next move isn't just mathematical. It started with a whisper on a podcast. 2 weeks after the live-streamed hearing, Tariq sat in a soundproof booth across from the host of Black Scholars Uncut, a rising digital platform spotlighting academic voices too often overlooked. The host, Avery West, had discovered Tariq through the peer reviewer execution thread and insisted on giving him space to speak, unfiltered and uncut. You didn't just build a theorem, Dr. West said into the mic. You built a mirror. Tariq sat still, voice controlled but resolute. I didn't want to be an activist. I just wanted to solve problems. But the system was the problem. In the following days, the clip went viral on TikTok and Instagram. One soundbite in particular, his closing line, became a rallying cry. They tried to fail me with math. So I gave them math they couldn't fail. That line exploded across digital platforms. YouTubers broke down his model. Educators reposted his lecture whiteboards. Even high school students stitched the clip into their own videos about classroom bias, captioning them with Tariq proved the system wrong. And so can we. 3 days later, the video of Tariq's original presentation from the math conference, thought lost in technical error, was uploaded by Dr. Reyes. Within 24 hours, it had over 1 million views. The comment sections buzzed with a strange mixture of reverence and disbelief. Some hailed it as the future of applied mathematics. Others labeled it academic terrorism in disguise. Slate's loyalists attempted to flood the video with dislikes and counter theories, but the algorithm worked against them. More podcasts followed. Then online articles. Then invitations. One stood out, an invitation to speak at a TEDx-style symposium hosted by Riverside University. a liberal arts school known for innovation and social justice thought leadership. Tariq hesitated. What if I go too big too fast? He asked me. She smirked. You didn't start this movement. They did when they pushed you out. You're just claiming the mic now. At Riverside, he stood under bright lights, face illuminated by the red TEDx dot. He didn't use slides, didn't project formulas. Instead, he began by writing on a whiteboard. UI, then XC erase pull resources, a system bias, and finally, YXS pos output, recognition. This, he said to the room, is the equation they never let me solve. But we've all lived it. For 15 minutes he walked them through logic gates, bias feedback loops, and his framework of oppression algebra, explained not as rebellion, but resilience. He ended with the same signature line, now etched in culture. They tried to fail me with math, so I gave them math they couldn't fail. The applause was thunderous. But applause doesn't silence lawsuits. The next morning, his phone buzzed with a notification that chilled the blood in his veins. Slate versus Ellison. Formal lawsuit filed. The filing alleged that Tariq had stolen core intellectual components from Slate's unpublished 2017 paper. It claimed his entire framework was a derivative of Slate's early ideas, repurposed for activist class. It also listed damages, intellectual theft, academic defamation, and emotional distress. It was a power play, plain and sharp. Worse. The lawsuit reached the press within hours. Controversial student faces lawsuit for stealing professor's work. Read one headline. Another asked, was Tariq Ellison's breakthrough just academic plagiarism? The backlash hit harder this time. His inbox flooded again, some telling him to hang in there, others calling him a fraud, an opportunist, a symbol of the race card gone viral. The pressure built so fast he could feel it in his ribs. That night he received an unexpected message. It was an email. Simple subject line, from someone who taught you before they judged you. The sender? Mrs. Valeria Keyes, his high school AP calculus teacher. He hadn't seen or spoken to her in years. But she remembered. Tariq, I watched your talk. I knew the day I met you they'd come for you. They always come for the ones who don't flinch when they're underestimated. Just don't let them pull you down into the courtroom and out of the classroom. You are a scholar first. Stay in the truth. Let the rest chase the noise. Keyes. Tariq sat back in his chair, eyes brimming. For all the noise, it was her voice that anchored him. Firm, maternal, rooted in belief. Then came the letters. Typed. Handwritten. Folded in envelopes. Sent through email. Posted to anonymous forums. Messages from students at Ohio State. From Chicago. From Atlanta. From overseas. From kids still in high school. From first-year law students. From an 8th grader in Detroit, who said he printed out Tariq's formulas and taped them to his binder. You made us feel seen, one wrote. You made them feel afraid. Another said, and that's how we know it worked. He saved every one, even the anonymous ones. The threats too came in waves. One email warned, keep pushing and you'll vanish like the others. Another said, hope your theorem can predict jail time. Tariq reported the worst ones, but some came from untraceable proxies. The university, predictably, said there was insufficient evidence of imminent threat. Dr. Reyes called him privately that night. They don't just want to ruin your model. They want to erase your legacy before it exists. So what do I do? Tariq asked. You keep moving forward. Nothing terrifies power more than being outpaced by the truth. He buried himself in final edits of his formal paper, now slated for peer review across 2 academic journals. He added citations, improved variable weights, polished visuals, and added a new section, Mathematical Tools for Predictive Equity in Higher Education. Mia helped frame the sociological impact. Simone redesigned the diagrams. On a whim, he sent a copy to his mother with a note. I know it's a lot of math, but just know every symbol was written to prove I'm still standing. She replied an hour later, with a photo of his 3rd grade drawing titled Math Hero, and a caption, You've always been solving what scared them. 3 days later, the unexpected arrived. He was sitting in the back corner of the campus library, head down, headphones in, when he refreshed his inbox. Subject inquiry from Harvard Department of Mathematics. He blinked. Then read the opening lines. Dear Mr. Ellison, we've been following your work with great interest, including your recent presentation at Riverside University and the emerging application of your oppression algebra framework. Our department is exploring a series of seminars around the intersection of mathematical ethics and structural inequity, and we would be honored to have you visit, present, and possibly collaborate further. We are aware of the controversy. We believe the conversation you've started matters. Let us know if you're open to a meeting. Warmly, Dr. Elise Granger, Department Chair, Harvard Mathematics. He reread the message 5 times. There were no mistakes, no ambiguity. Harvard. Reaching out to him, not out of pity, not out of obligation, because they believed the math. He whispered under his breath, voice cracking. They can't bury it now. As Tariq stared at the email, heart pounding, a new notification popped up. This one from the university's Office of Legal Affairs. Subject line, immediate notice, injunction filed against public presentation of unapproved academic work. Tariq stood in the green room, hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his collar. He wasn't wearing a suit. No designer tie, just a crisp white button-down, and his grandfather's black wool cardigan. The one passed down for moments that matter. Behind the stage curtain, murmurs rose from one of the most prestigious auditoriums in the world. Harvard's Department of Mathematics had transformed its flagship seminar into a national event. The title, Equity in Algorithms Beyond the Equation, and the final speaker of the day was him. As he stepped onto the stage, the air shifted, not because of his name, but because of what it symbolized. A black student, still technically under review for academic violations, now standing on one of academia's highest platforms. The lights warmed his skin. The rows before him were full mathematicians, policy scholars, undergraduates, reporters, and a row of black professors who had fought decades to make space for this moment. He didn't start with credentials. He didn't start with his theory. He started with a story. When I was 8, Tariq said, his voice calm but cutting, I asked my teacher why math always had one right answer. She said, because it's fair. A ripple of amusement passed through the crowd. Years later, I learned math doesn't just calculate, it conceals. It's been used to justify IQ gaps, to grade subjectively, to build policies that look neutral but cut uneven. Math doesn't lie, but people use math to do it. He turned to the whiteboard. With sharp strokes, he recreated the architecture of oppression algebra, each variable mapped not only to outcome, but to moral context. From race to retention bias, from pedagogical expectations to structural access velocity. The model wasn't just academic, it was urgent. Systems don't oppress by accident, he said, eyes sweeping the room. They oppress with calculated efficiency. And this framework doesn't ask if injustice exists. It shows how and where it accelerates. He paused. I didn't create this to challenge math. I created it because I believe in it. I just believe it should work for all of us. Silent. Then thunder. The applause was immediate. Standing. Rising. Relentless. Not polite clapping, but clapping that echoed like footsteps on stained marble. A sound heavy with meaning. One of the reporters later wrote, we didn't just witness the birth of a theory, we witnessed the reclamation of logic itself. Media headlines lit up within hours. Teen invents new math. Exposes systemic racism in academia. The Guardian. Harvard hosts black prodigy who disrupted the calculus of privilege. NY Times.
Math isn't racist. But Tariq Ellison proved people are. Thought.
From expulsion to ovation. The student who mathed his way through racism. Slate. Ironically, by the next day, Tariq's inbox overflowed. Stanford wanted him to keynote a spring symposium. Yale offered a visiting scholar opportunity. MIT reached out to collaborate on algorithmic ethics research. A publisher offered a $75,000 advance for a book tentatively titled Proof by Oppression. Dr. Reyes called just to say, you rewrote the theorem, and the room. Tariq had never felt smaller, not in the weak sense, but in the humbled, awestruck kind. All the attention, all the interviews, all the momentum, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, the wind of history pushing at his back. But there was one call he hadn't made. He dialed his mom at 11:12 p.m., still in the Harvard guest suite. When she picked up, there was no hello, just her voice, quiet and thick. I saw the whole thing, baby. I watched you prove them wrong. He swallowed. You always believed I could. I did, she said. But watching you walk into that room like it belonged to you, that did something to me. Tariq sat in silence, letting her voice fill the space. She continued, they tried to write you out, but you wrote yourself back in, with math they couldn't erase. But not everyone was clapping. Back at his university, beneath the surface of celebration, something darker stirred. Professor Slate, no longer publicly defending himself, had gone silent, but not idle. While the media praised Tariq, Slate huddled in his office, poring over administrative records, alumni contracts, and internal policies. His face flickered under the screen's glow. Every keystroke calculated, every action backed with plausible deniability. He didn't need to discredit Tariq in the news. He only needed to dismantle the one thing that proved he belonged: his record. The following morning, Tariq woke early, still glowing from the Harvard momentum, and logged into his university portal to check on his coursework. What he saw dropped him cold. Student not found. He blinked, reloaded the page. Then again. Still, no record found. No transcript available. No enrollment data. No courses listed. His heart thundered. He tried logging into his campus email. Access denied. He called the registrar. After 2 minutes on hold, a flat voice answered, "What's your name again?" "Tariq Ellison." A pause. Then, "I'm sorry, there's no student by that name currently enrolled." "That's impossible," he said. "Check again. We pulled from the central system. Your ID doesn't exist anymore." He hung up, blood draining from his face. He rushed to the Silent 7 room. Nia was already there, reviewing footage of his Harvard talk. "Did you get locked out too?" he asked breathlessly. She looked up. "What?" "My portal. My records. They're gone." She bolted upright. "What do you mean gone?" He showed her. Her mouth parted. No. This is not procedural. They can't just wipe your academic existence." Simone arrived 5 minutes later and tried pulling Tariq's name through the university library system. Nothing. No ID. No access.
They scrubbed you, she whispered. "This is administrative erasure."
Tariq's head spun. His voice cracked. "They're trying to pretend I was never here." The worst part wasn't just being erased. It was knowing how strategic it was. Without an academic record, his scholarship was frozen. His courses invalidated. His degree halted. It was a move so quiet, so technical, it almost passed for a glitch. But it wasn't. It was Slate's final equation. Subtract the student. Subtract the proof. And everything that remained could be dismissed as myth. As Tariq sat in stunned silence, his phone buzzed again. A new email from a burner account. No subject line, no signature, just one sentence. "Your next fight won't be against equations. It'll be against the institution that taught you to trust them." The sentence clung to his screen like ash. "You were never officially enrolled." It didn't make sense. The words were there, but they didn't align with the reality Tariq had lived. Assignments submitted, grades received, lectures endured, battles fought. He had a dorm key. He had ID cards. He'd spoken at campus events, been listed on rosters, signed for exam packets. He wasn't a ghost. And yet now, the university claimed he had never existed. He stared at the screen in a state of disbelief that felt almost physical, as if reality had begun folding in on itself. In one calculated act, Slate hadn't just tried to end his academic future. He had tried to delete his past. Simone confirmed it from another device. "The database has been flushed. Student records, transcript, registration history, all gone." Mia paced behind them, phone pressed to her ear. "This is data manipulation. I don't care if it's subtle. It's illegal." Mullick walked in seconds later with a printout, pulled this from the public-facing registrar archive using the Wayback Machine. He dropped it on the table. It was a cached version of the university's spring 2025 enrollment list. There it was: Ellison, Tariq J., enrolled in 5 credits of advanced calculus, intro to mathematical modeling, and academic ethics. Tariq stared at his name, circled in red ink. "They lied," he whispered. "No," Malik said. "They erased." The next morning, they contacted Law and Equity, a non-profit legal group specializing in student rights and education-based discrimination. Within hours, Tariq was on a Zoom call with attorney Elise Sharp, a soft-spoken black woman, who listened carefully, without interrupting, as he laid out the events. She didn't blink. "This isn't a glitch," she said finally. "This is coordinated academic fraud. But we'll need irrefutable proof to move this beyond civil complaint." Nia stepped in.
We already suspect document tampering, and we think it wasn't just Tariq.
Tariq added, "I'm not the first, just the most public." Elise nodded. "Then we don't just fight the claim, we dismantle the entire system that enabled it." Her voice was calm but sharp enough to cut steel. With her guidance, the Silent Seven began the next phase of the battle: digital forensics. Simone found back-end versions of Tariq's logging activity saved on cached servers. He had accessed coursework from faculty pages multiple times each week. Malik retrieved archived help desk tickets where Tariq had requested course-related tech support. Nia tracked inconsistencies in the registrar's timestamp logs, including a suspicious data purge initiated at 2:46 a.m., the day after his Harvard talk. But the key breakthrough came from an unlikely place: Becca, the same IT student who'd once explained the grading override system. She messaged Tariq anonymously through Signal. "I shouldn't be doing this, but I checked the access logs. 3 admin accounts deleted your records manually. The request originated from a faculty building. One of the users, gslate63." Becca attached a screenshot, an internal log buried deep in the system architecture, showing manual deletions of Tariq's student ID, transcript, and academic history. A second account, J. Whitaker42, executed a final override. Tariq read it, then read it again. They hadn't just framed him. They'd scripted his academic extinction. Nia cross-referenced that second user account. Whitaker, Janice, Associate Dean of Academic Records. "We've got 2 now," she said. "Slate and Whitaker. But how far back does it go?" Tariq asked. That became the next question. Simone compiled a list of minority students who had filed discrimination complaints and left the university within a year of enrollment. Using alumni forums and archived student newspapers, they traced patterns. 17 students, over the past 9 years, had abruptly vanished from records without official expulsion. Some left quietly, some tried to fight, most gave up. Nia got a call back from one Olivia Trask, class of 2017, now a nurse in Atlanta. "They did the same thing to me," she said. "They told me I'd been academically disqualified. I tried getting my transcript for transfer. It didn't exist. I thought it was just incompetence." "No," Nia told her. "It was policy." Elise filed an emergency injunction within the week. They delivered a formal civil rights complaint against the university to the Department of Justice, citing targeted erasure of student records, coordinated document tampering by faculty and administrative staff, racial discrimination under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, retaliation for protected academic speech. The complaint included the names of 2 university officials and 1 faculty member. Gregory Slate, DOJ agents, responded in less than 72 hours. They would open an investigation. Tariq sat silently in the study room as that email came through, his eyes locked on the screen. He didn't cheer, didn't cry. He just inhaled deeply. "I thought proving the math was hard," he said quietly. Nia replied, "Proving the motive is harder." "And yet here we are," Malik said. Tariq leaned back, a new equation forming in his head, not of numbers or inequality, but of pressure, of fear, of a system cracking under the weight of its own arrogance. They had come for him with spreadsheets and silence. Now he was coming back with receipts and federal oversight. But then came the unexpected twist. 3 days after the complaint was filed, a new file surfaced on a student forum under the handle AdminLeak21. The title "Proof Slate Knew" and "Proof They All Did." It was a folder of emails between Slate, Whitaker, and Vice Provost Herman Ellis. The language was coded, but clear. "These high-risk admits become liabilities if we don't act early. Let's prioritize clean data, minimal deviations before the next funding audit. I've initiated quiet removals before. We don't leave fingerprints, just exits." Ellison's case went public. "Clean it up." The last line made Tariq go cold. The DOJ now had cause to launch not just an inquiry, but a federal investigation into the university's admissions and retention practices. A week later, a subpoena landed on Slate's desk, and for the first time in years, his smirk disappeared. That night, as federal agents entered the administration building, Nia received a private message with a redacted list of pending faculty retirements, and 1 name scheduled for promotion: G. Slate. The panel was supposed to be civil, titled Academic Integrity and Institutional Trust. The televised discussion was part of the university's desperate attempt at damage control. It was streamed live on 3 platforms, moderated by an alum-turned-CNN correspondent, and stacked with a lineup of polished administrators, seasoned professors, and student reps. But everyone knew what the real show was. Tariq Ellison versus Professor Gregory Slate. They were seated on opposite ends of the long stage table, separated by 2 faculty members and the stiff weight of unspoken tension. Cameras clicked like metronomes. A countdown flashed red above the stage. 4, 3. Tariq's fingers gripped the edge of the table as the broadcast went live. The moderator opened politely. Tonight we're here to explore how academic institutions can rebuild trust in light of recent controversies surrounding bias, grading inequity, and procedural transparency. Slate smiled as if he weren't the elephant in the room. Tariq sat composed, the edges of his expression sharpened with purpose. The moderator continued. Professor Slate, you've been at the center of a number of concerns recently. Would you like to address them? Slate nodded, voice measured. I believe in standards. I believe in rigor. I believe not everyone can, or should, pass through this institution untested. That's not racism. That's excellence. Murmurs rippled in the audience. Tariq's eyes didn't flinch. When it was his turn, Tariq leaned into the mic. Excellence shouldn't be a weapon. It should be a ladder. But in this university, it's been used as a gate locked tight, guarded, and aimed. Slate interjected. I never locked anything. I enforced curriculum. That's my job. Tariq turned toward him. You didn't just enforce rules, you invented them. Then you bent them for students who looked like you, and snapped them over the backs of those who didn't. The room stilled. The moderator raised a hand. Let's keep this respectful. I am, Tariq said. Respectful to the truth. Slate scoffed. You're a child playing in a sandbox of adult ideas. You think formulas can diagnose racism? That equations can explain away failure? No, Tariq replied calmly. But they can prove who's failing us. And the math doesn't lie. As the moderator moved on, Slate grew visibly irritated. His answers clipped. His smile faltered. Then came the breaking point. When asked whether he had ever targeted students for non-academic reasons, Slate's mask cracked. I have the right to assess who belongs, he said. It's called academic fit. And frankly, when you come from underprepared backgrounds, cultural or educational, you're not always fit for this space. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. The moderator blinked. Did you just? Slate cut her off. Let's not pretend every student is a genius. And let's stop pretending race doesn't correlate with performance. The room erupted. The moderator waved her arms, trying to contain the chaos. But it was too late. The facade was gone. Slate had finally said out loud what he had whispered through policies for years. The moment went viral within an hour. Clips of the panel flooded social media with captions like he said it out loud. An academic racism, caught in. Tariq's calm takedown was looped beside Slate's collapse. Memes spun out of his line. Excellence shouldn't be a weapon. But the real storm was happening behind the scenes. That same week, the DOJ subpoenaed over 2 decades of internal faculty evaluations, meeting minutes, and communications between administrators. What they found painted a damning portrait. Slate had recommended targeted grade deflation for students in specific demographic brackets. He had coordinated with Dean Whitaker on removing underperforming outliers, coded language for Black and first-gen students. One file showed a memo titled, Retention Cleanup Initiative, Q1 Planning, signed by both Slate and the vice provost. And it wasn't isolated. Over 20 professors had at some point used similar language, some subtly, others with reckless clarity. The DOJ called it a pattern of systemic exclusion perpetuated under the guise of academic filtering. As national headlines broke, the university scrambled. Donors pulled out. A major tech company rescinded a $2 million research grant. The alumni board demanded accountability. Finally, the university suspended Slate with pay, pending further investigation. But the faculty senate held a vote. The result? 43% voted against his removal. Tariq read the report with tight lips. They still believe in him, Simone said, half in disbelief. They don't believe in him, Nia corrected. They believe in what he protected. If Slate falls, so does the system. Malik added. That vote wasn't about him. It was about them. That night, Tariq revisited one of his first equations, the foundational loop in oppression algebra. Bias pyre. Legacy, a protected lie. He'd thought it was about Slate. Now he saw the full equation. Slate was just the symptom. The system was the root. And the lie had been curated, preserved and passed down, one faculty vote at a time. As he closed his notebook, Tariq received a new encrypted message from a DOJ contact. There's someone else. A senior name buried in the provost's logs. And they're higher than Slate ever was. They didn't say the word sorry. When the university reinstated Tariq's enrollment, restored his transcript, and awarded him full credit for the semester. There was no ceremony, no apology, just a curt email with the subject line, "Status restored, academic record adjustment confirmed." But it was a win. And wins like these didn't come gift-wrapped. They came clawed from the ribs of a system that only loosened its grip when forced. Tariq stood on the steps outside the registrar's office, watching the students pass by. He was one of them again, on paper, but in spirit he was something else entirely. Nia joined him, handing him a small envelope. "What's this?" he asked. She smirked. "Better than their email." Inside was a folded card handwritten. "You didn't just get back in. You broke the wall. Proud of you. Silent 7. 2 weeks later, he stood on a national stage, this time not to defend himself, but to be honored. The National Education Reform Summit had invited him to speak during its closing ceremony, the event usually reserved for policymakers, tenured researchers, and corporate donors, had made a rare exception. He was introduced not as a student, but as a mathematical reformist. The moderator read from a prepared statement. "Tonight we recognize Tariq Ellison, whose courage, intellect, and refusal to accept invisible barriers has opened new doors in quantitative justice." As applause rose, he approached the podium, eyes heavy with fatigue and fire. "My story isn't rare," he began. "It's just one that didn't end in silence." He told them how data can erase, how equations can be weaponized, how systems, when left unmeasured, multiply their harm. But he said, "We can reverse the function. We can rewrite the model. We can build frameworks that don't just measure bias, they break it." Then came the moment no one expected. He pulled out a folder and held it high. "This," he said, "is the blueprint for Proof of Us, a nonprofit initiative to teach oppressed youth how to read and rewrite the structures that work against them. We're building a network of tutors, mentors, coders, and mathematicians to train the next generation, not just to solve equations, but to decode systems." He paused, because if we don't, the next generation won't be failed. They'll be erased before they even know what they could have been. Proof of Us launched within weeks. It started with 6 volunteers, former Silent 7 members and 2 of Tariq's Harvard contacts. Their mission to design free, culturally relevant math curriculum, focused on social justice, power analytics, and resistance modeling. They hosted their first workshop at a community center in Birmingham, Alabama. 35 Black and brown students attended. Many had never even heard the word algorithm, outside of TikTok. By the end of the weekend, one 13-year-old girl was explaining logical bias gates to her father using a kitchen table analogy. Tariq sat in the back and wept quietly. He didn't cry for himself. He cried for what had nearly been lost. Yet even in triumph, the wounds lingered. In interviews, he smiled. In classrooms, he taught. In board meetings, he strategized. But in private, he couldn't sleep. He'd wake some nights thinking about the red slashes on his quizzes, the blank portal screen, the moment the officer suggested he'd vandalized his own dorm. He tried not to let it show. But Nia saw it. "Every revolution leaves scars," she told him once, gently. "Even when it wins." He nodded. But the truth dug deeper, because for all the speeches, awards, and articles, he knew something chilling. He'd survived. But so many hadn't. Names without protest. Students without silent 7s. Quiet withdrawals. Quiet erasers. Quiet deaths of potential. That guilt lived in him. One afternoon, as he packed for an upcoming panel in D.C., he received a message from an anonymous sender. "Meet me behind Baird Hall. 6 p.m. I have something you need to see. A friend." It was the kind of message he might have ignored months ago. But now he trusted the shadows more than the sunlight. He went. Behind the old brick building, he found a woman in her early 40s. Hoodie up, arms crossed, she introduced herself as Dr. Renee Holloway, a former adjunct who'd been quietly pushed out 3 years prior. "I was a ghost in the math department," she said. "Until I wasn't." She handed him a flash drive. "What is it?" he asked. "Evidence," she replied. That slate wasn't the end. He was the face. The disease runs deeper. He plugged the drive in that night. Inside, emails, memos, grade modification requests. But the name that appeared most often wasn't Slate. It was Dr. Robert Everson, a tenured professor still teaching, still writing recommendations, still shaping policy. One memo read, "Continue tightening early filters. Ellison was a PR nightmare. Let's avoid the next one by never admitting them in the first place." Tariq sat back in his chair. Slate may have fallen, but the formula that protected him was still active. As Tariq read deeper, he discovered an encrypted folder titled Phase 2 Quiet Reform. Password protected. Timestamped just 1 week earlier. They had tried to bury it through red marks, rigged hearings, legal threats, and digital deletion. But now oppression algebra was being taught in classrooms from New York to Oakland. The method they once dismissed as activist nonsense had become the cornerstone of a growing movement, proof with purpose, math that accounted for the people it affected. Teachers adapted it into modules. Community colleges launched pilot programs. Students submitted projects that traced injustice through data like crime scenes, reconstructed with equations. Tariq didn't call it a victory. He called it a correction. And still, even as the country caught up, the resistance remained. "I'm tired," he confessed to Nia over breakfast, the morning after another overnight Zoom call with a district curriculum committee in Missouri. "Of what?" she asked. "Being invited into rooms I had to break into last year. Of smiling at administrators who would have watched me drown if Slate hadn't slipped." She paused. "Maybe that's the job now. Showing up where they expect you to flinch." He nodded. "It just feels dishonest. Like I'm solving for a future they were ready to delete." Nia reached across the table. "You're not solving for them. You're solving in spite of them. That's different." Requests poured in faster than he could accept. Yale, UCLA, Northwestern, even his original university, under new leadership, requested his input for an inclusivity overhaul. He declined that last one. Simone, now co-directing Proof of Us, laughed when he told her. "Let them fix their math without you," she said. "We've got bigger equations to solve." But even as his influence grew, so did the backlash. The emails came again, this time from concerned parents, traditionalists, and objectivists. The message was always the same: math should not be political. Then came the op-ed, published in the National Educator. It bore the headline, "When Math Becomes a Mirror, The Dangerous Politicization of Numbers," by Dr. Gregory Slate. Tariq read it in full. Jaw clenched. Slate never mentioned his name, but the target was unmistakable. He claimed recent trends were dismantling academic rigor in favor of cultural narrative. He described oppression matrices as quantitative activism masquerading as science. He argued that true mathematics must remain immune to the tides of identity politics. It was Slate's cleanest attack yet, elegant, coded, perfectly palatable to readers who didn't know the full history. Tariq read the final line twice. "If we allow every grievance to become a formula, we no longer have math. We have vengeance." He didn't respond immediately. He sat with it for days, listening, watching. And then, during a talk at Georgetown titled Math as Resistance, a student asked during Q&A, "Will you ever confront him directly? Like a real debate?" Tariq paused. He looked out over the crowd full of young faces who had watched him climb, crash, and rebuild. Then he said yes. The invitation went out that night. A public tweet. No hashtags, no theatrics. Just Tariq's face beside Slate's op-ed, with the caption, "I'm ready for the math. Let's put our theorems where our mouths are. Live debate. 1 hour. You pick the platform." The tweet went viral in under 3 hours. The public begged for it. Educators demanded it. Pundits lined up to moderate it. Slate took 3 days to respond. But when he did, it was a quote tweet. Short and sharp. "Let the world watch. I accept." The internet fractured into anticipation. Memes, polls, speculations. Math war trended globally. Some treated it like a boxing match. Others like a historic reckoning. But for Tariq, it wasn't a battle. It was a funeral for a lie. Nia watched him prepare in the days leading up to the debate. He wasn't nervous, but he wasn't cocky either. He reviewed his original models, updated real-world applications, studied Slate's op-ed line by line. What if he flips it? Simone asked during one prep session. What if he weaponizes your own framework against you? Then I'll let the math answer, Tariq said quietly. Because math doesn't lie. It just waits for the right question. He paused, then added, "Besides, I've spent my life defending my right to exist in this field. Now I'll let the field speak back." The night before the debate, Tariq walked alone to the same dorm where his door had once been vandalized. He stood in front of it, silent. The red slur was gone, repainted, the scorch marks cleaned. But the memory remained. He pulled a marker from his pocket and wrote quietly at the base of the doorframe, "They tried to fail me. I showed them their math was broken." He stepped back, exhaled, and left without turning around. 20 minutes before the debate, a staffer handed him a sealed envelope, marked confidential. Inside, a legal brief from Slate's attorney, not a cease and desist, but a settlement offer. If Tariq withdrew from the debate and retracted his framework, he'd receive a $250,000 research grant and guaranteed publishing access through a partnered journal. Beneath the signature line was a single phrase: numbers fade, names don't. Walk away. The studio was silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that doesn't settle, but hovers waiting to break. Tariq Ellison sat beneath the white-hot lights of the debate stage, flanked by massive LCD panels and a crowd that stretched into the digital millions. The live stream counter ticked up relentlessly, 3.7 million. Opposite him sat Gregory Slate. Perfectly composed, his salt and pepper hair parted sharply, suit flawless, smile deliberate. He looked every bit the man he had spent decades convincing the world he was: an academic purist, a protector of tradition, the gatekeeper-in-chief. Tariq looked smaller in comparison. No tie, just a dark sweater and a stack of notes beside him. But what he carried couldn't be measured in posture or optics. He carried proof. The moderator welcomed them. Tonight, we are here to explore a single question. Has mathematics been weaponized against equity? Slate answered first, voice smooth, trained. Mathematics is not biased. It is not political. What has become political is how math is used to disguise social narratives as quantitative rigor. Then it was Tariq's turn. No one's arguing against math, he said. We're arguing against how math has been bent, against how certain people control the formula, set the rules, define the standard. My method doesn't politicize math. It reveals that the system already did. They moved through segments, grading algorithms, equity models, predictive analytics. Slate wielded language like armor, dense, impressive, and cold. He cited centuries-old theorems, dodged pointed questions, and leaned heavily on phrases like academic objectivity and the sanctity of numbers. Then Tariq projected his first slide.
It wasn't theory.
It was data. Leave GPA discrepancies, mapped by race and funding access across 57 institutions, predictive dropout rates for students flagged as high risk, cross-plotted graphs of faculty overrides, subjective grade penalties, and racial identity, all overlaid onto campus retention patterns. These numbers, Tariq said, voice clear, don't tell a story, they confess it. Slate tried to interrupt. Correlation does not equal causation, which is why I built models that show causal loops, Tariq countered. Not just trends, but mechanisms, bias gates, and recursive suppression circuits. He pulled up another slide. This one was titled, Mathematical Erasure, How Policies Turn Equations into Exclusion. The room stilled. But it wasn't just the math that cut deep. It was the grace with which Tariq delivered it. He didn't mock Slate, didn't raise his voice. He let the numbers speak. He layered lived experience over logic, showed how equations can become barriers, how neutrality is a myth when applied by biased hands. At one point he paused. I was told math would set me free, he said. When I solved faster than others, they marked me wrong. When I asked questions, they marked me disruptive. When I showed work they couldn't understand, they claimed I didn't write it. He turned toward the camera. They tried to fail me, but math proves what they denied. The moderator gave Slate the floor for final remarks. He stammered through a defense of standards, but the conviction was gone. His rebuttals felt desperate, untethered from the gravity of what Tariq had presented. When it ended, the moderator thanked them. But before the feed cut, Slate muttered, still on mic, "This is why we gatekeep." The room gasped. The clip spread within minutes. Every major outlet ran headlines. Tariq Ellison destroys legacy of academic bias on live debate. Washington Post. Slate implodes. Final comment sparks national backlash. MSNBC. Proof by oppression proven on global stage. When math told the truth. Time magazine. By morning Slate had resigned. No press conference. No farewell letter. Just an email, with 4 words. Effective immediately. I'm done. Tariq didn't celebrate. He sat in his dorm. His dorm, reissued in full, quietly deleting the old notes he'd written during those long nights of uncertainty. The equation on the window had long since faded. But its legacy lived on, in the work, in the model, in the movement. He finished the semester with highest honors, his name now etched into the academic record that once tried to forget him. A scholarship fund was created in his name. Harvard invited him to co-teach a course on resistance mathematics.
In proof of us?
It exploded. 10 new cities, 3 new languages, a waiting list of over 3,000 students. One day, he visited his mother unannounced. She opened the door, saw his face, and said nothing. Just hugged him longer than she ever had before. He handed her a single sheet of paper. His degree, stamped and sealed. "I told you they'd come for me," he said. She smiled, tears in her eyes. "And I told you, let them try." Months later, a ceremony was held. An old community college, once known for rejecting progressive curriculum, renamed its math building. As they unveiled the plaque, cameras clicked. Students cheered. But the most powerful moment wasn't televised. Because just off to the side, near the back steps of the building, a small boy stood nervous, clutching a worn-out copy of Proof by Oppression. He was black, quiet, his shoes scuffed, and as he stared up at the building's name, something changed behind his eyes. Not certainty, just possibility. As the final credits rolled on a documentary about Tariq's journey, the screen faded to black. Then lit up with a title card. Coming next. The students who took his math and turned it into law. A new chapter was beginning. No one should have to prove they deserve to exist in a classroom, let alone survive it. If watching this hurt, it's because too many stories like Tariq's go unseen. Type yes if you believe truth should never be silenced. Subscribe if this broke your heart and your silence.